Students, hi, Catherine Robertson here. We are in week 3. It is quite exciting. The sun is shining, and hopefully you are enjoying the weather. Okay, so from week 2, some of you are still turning in items, which is okay. There were several orders of business. If you are still trying to turn in your intro video or trying to meet up with me, I will extend that a little bit further into week 3. I know a few of you are still struggling to post that. Again, if all else fails, you can take a little video with your phone and just text it to me. Make sure you say your name and the course when you text it to me. Spell your name, and when you send the video, spell your name, say the course, because I do get multiple videos from multiple courses. You can send it that way. Send it via phone. So you can just take a quick video so that I see your face and can put a face to kind of your background. So 1 or 2 minutes talking about why you're at the college, what you hope to get out of the course, whatever you want to share. Similar to your intro that you put on Blackboard. Okay, so this week we are looking at chapters 5 and 6. Chapters 5 and 6 are business communication and thinking about business communication items. I don't know why the PowerPoint looks. If you ever have issues with the PowerPoint, there are 3 little dots on the side. Click on those and you hit download, and it will go right to your computer, and then you open the download, because I do know that sometimes students run into that. Anyway, so chapter 5, there are 2 short videos prior that you might want to watch leading into chapter 5. And then in the chapter 5 PowerPoint, starts to discuss some of the things relating to communication, and some of the things that you already know because you're communicators. This idea of really kind of putting things into terms and talking about communication barriers, for instance, and some of the ways that those may affect us. And we did notice a lot of different communication barriers come to light during COVID. So like physical barriers, and we can't actually see someone, language barriers. Body language. Some of us have different types of body language when we're speaking and communicating, and it can sometimes interrupt what we're actually saying. Perceptual, we perceive things differently, and organizational, different organizations, and cultural. So all of these are discussed in the text as to barriers that can exist, and we do see these in a business standpoint. We see these because we do live in a globalized business world. And oftentimes, whether we are dealing with clients, customers, or maybe even our own employees that are from, maybe have language barriers, maybe have perceptual barriers, maybe they came from a different type of organization, cultural barriers. So all of those things can come into play, and not just with customers, vendors, other clients, types of clients, other businesses that we deal with, and then even our own employees. Okay, so, there are some tips, do's and don'ts for active listening, and these are tricky for us as individuals. And, we live in this tech era, and, they've done research on the idea that this distracts us. And, and making sure that we are using different forms of nonverbal communication. One of those being having your phone put away if you are in a type of meeting, unless you need your phone for, for business purposes, but making sure that you're focused on the other individual or the team that you are speaking with. And providing feedback, being engaging. So if you're speaking with someone, just think about if they either nod or get back to you in some way, shape, or form to say that they're listening, or digesting the information. So some of the listening don'ts, don't pick up your phone. Again, that is a little bit tricky often in the business world, because our phones, if we are waiting for a special phone call or a client or something like that, depending on the level of meeting we're in, we may be required to answer our phone or return an email or do something along those lines. So that is could be a little bit tricky. Bias, another thing to think about is when avoid using slang and bias, and making sure that individuals, not only within our organization but also customers, vendors, other businesses, that we try to be, we're not going to be perfect, but try to be respectful of others' feelings. And a lot of times this is where slang can get us into trouble. It can also, not just from a gender, age, race, nationality, ethnicity standpoint, but slang can sometimes be exclusionary. And it can, when we use slang, it can create some sort of like an elitist connection between you and another individual, or you and a couple individuals over the other individuals, kind of like an inside joke situation. And it can lead to conflict within an organization or in a professional setting. And so just something to be thinking about, when we use certain language, it can often come off like that, even if that is not our intent. And so remember, a lot of things, especially when we're thinking about slang or bias, it's not our intent necessarily to hurt an individual's and other individuals' feelings or make someone feel excluded. But it can happen anyway, even if it's not our intent. So it's just something to think about from a communication standpoint. The other thing, communication also has to deal with writing. And so a lot of the things that you learn in your English 101 course helps you when it comes to communication. You do have to take some communication and writing courses that will really kind of bolster this business communication portion of your degree. The other thing is PowerPoint presentation, and I have you guys do one for this class. You end up having to do one on the company that you chose. 4 to 5 slide PowerPoint that you could use to present and have as a prop. And so there are a couple of things over the years we've really learned, like what works and what doesn't work for PowerPoints. Do we follow those rules? Absolutely not. A lot of times we will see full paragraphs on PowerPoints. Even the PowerPoints that I post often are not that exciting. There aren't LinkedIn, or looped in videos always embedded and lots of color and things, and just the right amount of color. So thinking about chapter 5, and there's also 10 tips for a dynamic delivery, making sure that if you're giving any type of speech, which again you learn this in some of your comm classes, or I believe you have to take one comm class for your gen ed, but if you haven't yet, you will learn what type of how to address your audience, a specific type of audience. And if you're giving a speech, you will learn about some of the do's and don'ts as to how you would address an audience, how you keep them engaged. And this as folks that have sat in an audience, or maybe you've given speeches before, or maybe you command a room for meetings, things like that. You kind of know what keeps people engaged and what doesn't. As a teacher, I see that with students. There are certain topics that are not engaging for students. Students are a little bit tricky because there are some students are in the room for all different reasons. And so the audience that would be a student base, we have some students that are very interested in the material, other students that don't even they're just made it to the class and they don't even necessarily want to be there, or they're very tired, or they have lots of things on their mind and they may not be paying attention. And so as a teacher, I have to remember that my audience may not be a typical audience that would be more homogenous. Okay, so then that is chapter 5, business communication. Then we go into, take a look at the video for chapter 6. There is types of business formation, and this video is really pretty inclusive of chapter 6. So it does a great job of summarizing chapter 6. The types of business formation video is done by an accountant. And so he does go into, in this video, it's very technical in some ways, the different forms that people fill out for the different types of businesses. But chapter 6, when we talk about business formation, if this seems like a lot, it is a lot. Business formation and trying to figure out how you want to structure your business, this is not only, this is a legal issue, but an accounting issue. So typically when you are forming a new business or you're changing the structure of business, you're going to need both of those types of counsel. You will need, from a legal standpoint, you will have to figure out how you will draw up the paperwork, and then from an accounting standpoint, how you will handle the taxation. And so whether you are looking at it from an entrepreneurial standpoint or you are trying to understand it better as to why businesses choose certain types of structures, that's kind of what we talk about in chapter 6. But again, it's just one of our chapters. It is not an entire course, but there are lots of courses. If you're interested in different types of business formations, that might be an area that you would have, you could look into further, either from an accounting standpoint or from a legal standpoint, might be something that you are interested in. Okay, so after watching the video, you should have an idea of what a sole proprietorship is, what an LLC is, and what a corporation is. And so really this idea of a sole proprietorship, a single owner, when we have a partnership, typically we have more than one owner. And corporations are always LLCs, or the liability is removed because they're a separate legal entity. But really this idea of an LLC, this limited liability corporation or company, or limited liability partnership, is something that you can get set up through the state. You can either have an attorney do it. If you are interested, you can get attorneys through the Small Business Development Center at a fraction of the cost. You could do something like LegalZoom. You can go right onto LegalZoom.com and you can start putting in your business industry, your business name. You can get a tax ID and turn it into a limited liability company. And I would say this to any business, and also to anyone maybe even that owns rental properties, that you want to turn your business into a separate entity in an effort to protect yourself, because the limited liability protects your personal assets. And so that is really the key. That was not something we needed maybe 50 years ago, but in this day and age, it's very important to protect yourselves like insurance. And so Chapter 6 starts to talk about, the advantages and disadvantages of a sole proprietorship. Again, folks open a business and they feel like this is their business. They don't want to turn it into some name and be an employee of their own business. And so that is one of the reasons people stay in a sole proprietorship. One of the issues with it, though, is that a lack of permanence. If you were a sole proprietorship, there's no company set up really that can live on after you are gone. Also, the idea of unlimited liability, the sense that if something happens at the business or the business gets sued, you and the business are one and the same. Partnership, some of the similar issues if it's not incorporated, except for you have one or more, two or more individuals that are able to provide financing. However, in a partnership, one of the things that we see happening sometimes are disagreements between partners as to the direction that the business should go. Typically in a corporation, so if we're talking about a large companies that you guys are working on, publicly traded companies, you will see a chief executive officer, and then you will also see a board of directors that kind of governs this chief executive officer position. And so there's an S Corp and a C Corp, but really I'm more concerned that you just know that there's a corporation, and there's also something called a nonprofit corporation, which we see a lot of, like the government entities, but churches are nonprofit corporations, schools, and they have members, and they have a board of directors, and they get their money in a different fashion from a for-profit business. Okay, so when we're thinking about corporate restructuring, there is something called an acquisition versus a merger. An acquisition is when one firm buys another. A merger is when two come together organizations to form a new organization, and a divestiture is when total or partial ownership of a firm changes to another company or to other investors. So when GE sold off a portion of the items, the businesses that it kind of oversees, that's a divestiture. And so if a company decides, like, we don't want to carry that line anymore, we're going to sell it off, it's not really following our mission, that would be divesting. This chapter also talks a little bit about franchising and the idea that, there's good and bad relating to franchising. And some of the advantages of franchising is that it's easy to get money. Brand recognition is already there, training and support, there's less risk. But the other issue, there are some things relating to costs. It's very expensive often to get a franchise up and running. One of the cheapest is Waffle House, because I looked into it. My children are very interested in Waffle House. It's still $300,000 to $400,000. Basically, you need to come up with, borrow, do whatever to open a Waffle House. Typically, you will see $500,000 to $1 million over the first couple of years to open, say, a Sonic. So there is an outlay or a level of risk, even if you're able to borrow all of that money. You still run the risk of it not working, right? And each franchise is set up a little bit differently. So if you're interested in franchising, that's something that we could talk about separately, or you could talk about that really with any of your instructors separately. But it is always an option. The other thing is the negative halo effect. We see that going on right now with McDonald's. And so there are a handful of McDonald's that are having the E. coli breakout. And so that is basically every McDonald's in the country is feeling that. So every McDonald's now has like, like not a skull and crossbones. I mean, for the Halloween season, right? But has kind of this negative, even if like our local McDonald's have nothing, they don't get any of their food from, the places that were causing the E. coli and they have nothing to do with it and no one's getting sick here. People are still looking at the McDonald's in the area like, oh, McDonald's is having trouble right now. It doesn't matter that it isn't here. And so that's a negative halo effect that if it's happening somewhere else or within the brand, even if it has nothing to do with your franchise, it can bring your franchise or put your franchise in a negative light or a negative halo. So look through chapter 6. And then the other thing, there's homework for 5 and 6 there for you to submit by 11/4. The discussion number 2. So this week we do have a discussion. It's our second discussion, even though it's week 3. And this is relating to chapter 6, typical partnership. Agreement spells out in details such as the initial contribution that each partner will make. It talks about how they'll settle disagreements, how they will deal with death or withdrawal of one of the partners. Well-written agreements can prevent common misunderstandings. So see if you can do a quick bit of research on the internet and create a checklist regarding a few of the things, maybe some steps, forms, fees needed to establish a partnership in your state, aka in PA, because most of you should be in PA, but you might not be. But so for instance in PA. And so really what I just want you to do is kind of look up what kind of things that partnerships might need in your state, but if you're in Pennsylvania, then in Pennsylvania. And you can find that on the government websites or different areas. And this is really, you can do even some bullet points, but just a couple of sentences saying like, these are the different things that when you're forming a partnership, you want to consider. And so see if you can just research that. So this discussion post is twofold. It's getting you to look, kind of research things on the internet, especially at government sites, and also so getting your feet wet, doing a little bit of research, but also informing you as to some of the things that you need to consider when you are forming a partnership. So that is discussion post, the second discussion post. If you have questions about week 3, please let me know. And that is the chapters 5 and 6. I am available. I'm on campus Tuesday and Thursday this week. I teach in the morning, but I teach from 9 to about 11:30. Then I'm there until 2, both Tuesday and Thursday. So from 11:30 till 2-ish. So if you want to just pop in, but make sure you text me first, 814-490-6473, or email me, crobertson@ec3pa, if you can. Just to make sure that I'm actually sitting at my desk and not roaming around the building somewhere or with another student. So that is this week, Tuesday and Thursday. If you needed to meet with me Wednesday, that could be arranged as well in the afternoon. But typically and in the morning I get in usually around 8:20 and I don't teach until 9. If you happen to be around campus and you wanted to stop in and say hi, I'm on the second floor of West Campus. Other than that, you can reach me via text or via email if you have questions about your grades. Sometimes the grades don't update automatically. If you turn in something even like a minute late or a minute after I have the deadlines that is tentatively set, it will show up as 0. But I go back in and I manually change stuff, so don't panic right away. And I think most of your teachers do that unless they are really have a hard, fast timeline, or time frame on their assignments. If they are like 1 minute late, you get 0 points, right? I don't do that typically. You still get points, so it's worth it for you to turn in anything you can, even if it's late, so that you can still get points on the board. Remember, all of the points that you have, actually, your grade, if you got every single point turned in every single assignment, would be equal 100 points for the end. So for instance, the discussion post, if you do that adequately and you get it in on time, it's worth 2.5 points. That's 2.5 percentage points toward your overall grade of 100 points. Each homework assignment is worth a total of 6 points. So each time you do one and turn one in, that's another 6 points. I just want to make sure that all makes sense to you. Okay, have a wonderful afternoon, and I will talk with you soon.